All right, guys, thanks for joining me. I know it's a little bit late, but it's a good night to talk. There's some things that we want to talk about. I wanted to reiterate, I guess, the strategy, because some people still are not very clear on the strategy. Listen, you guys contact me all the time. Every day, you guys contact me about something that you guys are dealing with, right? And one person might be dealing with rules of evidentiary procedure, irregularities in the evidence. Another person might have biased judge. Another one might have lies that's being told by the prosecutor or law enforcement. But nonetheless, you guys all have your individual issues, and you guys are asking me to come and help you with either a post-conviction relief or your actual offense. And what I want us to understand here is that if we can identify one particular instance in which government has breached your constitutional rights, then from that moment forward, everything that government does is going to be unconstitutional. So again, I want you guys to understand here that if the arrest is unconstitutional, because they did not have the proper paperwork in accordance with the Constitution to perform that arrest, then everything after that arrest is unconstitutional. Guys, 99% of the people that are arrested here in America did not either, one, have a grand jury indictment because they live in a state that doesn't conduct a grand jury, such as Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Washington, or they live in a state that has an equal protection issue, right, where they permit the prosecuting attorney to charge by information or indictment by their discretion. That is still unconstitutional, such as Oklahoma, such as Florida, such as Texas, such as Alabama, such as California. These are states that are permitting their prosecuting attorney to decide who gets a constitutional right and who does not. And that is a direct violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. So my point here, guys, is that the reason why I don't respond to you, right? The reason why I'm not coming out there and fighting your battles at the states is because we don't need to. We don't need to do an individual petition. We don't need to do an individual post-conviction relief. All we got to do is every single one of us come to the point where we all are getting our rights violated, and that's the arrest. That's the arrest. Now let's break it down here, okay? You see, and that's the arrest. That's the arrest. Now let's break it down here, okay? You see, with the way that the attorneys are doing it, they want to make money. Sorry, guys. They want to make money, right? So they're going to charge you $20,000, $30,000 for a post-conviction relief in front of people. And they're going to do it one at a time. One at a time. And you're going to spend $30,000 on something that you've got about a 3% chance of winning. So you're gonna spend that money on one single appeal. But what I'm offering to you guys right now is not one at a time. You're not going to pay me $30,000. You guys can pay me $1. And there's 2.9 million of you, right? And you think I can get this job done with $2.9 million? Absolutely. You guys can save your money, right? Sorry about that dog, guys. You guys can save your money and not pay an attorney to do a post-conviction relief for you, because what's happening there is that you guys want to say to me that this is implausible, right? That they'll never do this because it's so big. And you know what? The truth is that the size of this issue, it doesn't weaken the argument. It actually strengthens it. It strengthens it dramatically. Because when you guys are coming with a post-conviction relief, that's one single issue. One single person coming up with one single issue. And so you don't have a whole lot of power. You don't have a whole lot of noise, right? You're not able to amplify an issue because you're talking about one single issue. You see, these prosecutors, these attorneys, they want you off by yourself, arguing your own issue. They want you talking about the evidentiary procedures. They want you to talk about the biased judge or the lies from the prosecutor. They want you to do that because that puts you by yourself. We got strength in numbers. We have 2.9 million people currently incarcerated in prison. Every single one of them can talk about we have 2.9 million people that are currently incarcerated. Every single one of those people can talk about the arrest. Every one of them. We have 10 million people pre and post conviction. Every single one of them can talk about their unconstitutional arrest. Every one of them. Because every single one of you were affected in the same way as a result of the state's failure to arrest you in a lawful constitutional manner. And you see what that does then is that doesn't have us off by ourselves, arguing our own issue where we're only have the power of one. That puts 10 million people talking about one single issue. And now we got magnification on that issue. Now the Supreme Court will never shut that back up. Once we shine light on it and we put the power on it, then as of that moment, that will never, ever, ever be made silent again. You see, I can continue to run around the country begging that we can get heard, right, on this issue that is valid. There's no denying that this is valid, you guys. No denying it. But we're not being heard. They don't want to hear us because they know that the moment that they hear us, then they have to address it. And you guys, the Supreme Court of the United States, they will side with this. They have to. Because the only reason why the Supreme Court exists is because of the Constitution. It's the only reason why it exists. Article 3 is the only reason why the judicial branch has any existence whatsoever. Those 9 justices in Washington, D.C., they get their power from Article 3. They don't want to hear this because it's going to have a dramatic impact on their business operations. And they don't want that to happen. And they're going to do everything in their power to prevent from hearing this. But if they hear it, they will have to side with it. Because those justices do not want to give up their power. They do not want to give up their institution. And if they don't side with Article 3 and its supremacy of Article 3 and demand that every single court within the purview of the United States of America, within their purview, obey the edict that they put out, then they don't exist anymore. Washington, D.C. doesn't exist anymore. You see, this is the same argument that I have for Senator Mark Wayne. I just did. He was the last senator I talked to. And I told him, if you're going to say to me that when Oklahoma enacts its own alternative legislation that amends and deprives his own constituents of the very rights that are contained within the Bill of Rights, if you're not willing to stand up and defend Article 1 and its supremacy and say to the state of Oklahoma, you don't get to do that because you can't amend the Constitution of the United States. If you don't do that, then you don't exist anymore. You're not the center of anything. So, each one of these guys, the problem is that they don't have a backbone. They're just a bunch of pussies, guys. These senators, congressmen, they're nothing, man. They don't even have the integrity or the character or the courage to step up and preserve their job. And if that's the case, great. Let's shut Washington, D.C. down. Because if the president isn't willing to stand up and defend Article 2, which is what creates him, he doesn't exist anymore. You see, each one of these branches, whether it's the legislative branch, the executive branch, or the judicial branch, if they don't side with this, and trust me, they're going to do everything in their power to not hear it, to pretend like they don't hear it, because they don't want to have to make this decision. They don't want to have to do it. But if we bring it to the point where they have to hear it, because there's so much noise on it, they're going to side with this. They're going to side with it. They have to side with the Constitution, or their institution goes away. All three of them. Legislative branch will side with this because they have to. If the Constitution of the United States says something and someone does something different, that's unconstitutional. Guys, I've been trying to tell you since the day I started coming out here, I've been trying to explain to you that one of the things that I was taught in the school that I went to, George Washington University, the master's degree that I got in the law that I got, not procedural law, not administrative law, substantive law, what we were taught was anything that is not the Constitution is unconstitutional. Let that sink in for a moment, guys. Anything that is not the Constitution is unconstitutional simply by virtue of the fact that it's not the Constitution. That's why I say that the highest form of law is the Constitution. And the military philosophy, the military strategy is that whoever holds high ground has got a superior tactical capability. So if the Constitution is the highest form of law, then you get up into that high ground. You get up in that superior tactical capability and you don't come down off of it. When they try to draw you down into the weeds, when they try to draw you down into case law, you say, no, I'm not going to come down there. I'm going to stay in my elevated position. I'm going to stick with the Constitution because I'm going to draw you up to my level. And when you draw the judges up to your level, at the highest level, the Constitution, those judges can't fight at our level. They need you down at their level, arguing a bunch of stuff that isn't even constitutional. You don't have to argue with them on their merits of the argument. Anything that's not constitutional is unconstitutional. And it's unconstitutional not from the moment it was deemed such, but rather from the moment it was created, as it was never even created at all. You see, if we want to get the Constitution back in its foundation, where it's supposed to be, because I think that that's what we're all trying to do. We want that Constitution back in its place at the foundation. Well, the problem is that right now, they constructed this temple of justice upon the foundation of judge-made rulings and executive orders. The whole foundation is judge-made rulings and executive orders. The top is the Constitution, because the Constitution is the opposite of a judge-made ruling. So, if the Constitution was meant to be the foundation and everybody was to abide by it, all the rulings of the judges were to be consistent with it, because if they aren't, then they would be unconstitutional. And we know that judges are tethered to the Constitution because of their oath, their affirmation, and the Supremacy Clause. Then that means that if the judges go to a judge-made ruling, to what they call case law, to determine whether or not your rights have been violated, then they're going to the object different from what their fidelity is bound. They have to go to the Constitution to determine whether or not your rights have been violated, not to the flawed decision of the man that came before them, or the flawed decision of the man that came before them. But we're under this belief here in America that judges make rulings, and those rulings are called case law, and we rely upon that case law to determine the future of the law. And that's not what we created. That's what England created, because in England, the king makes the laws. And he grants his agents, the judges, the ability to speak the law because he can. And so therefore, judges in England do create law. What they say is law because the king permits them to do it. But here in America, we don't have a king. Here in America, the people of the United States, we create the laws. We delegated that to ourselves. We did not delegate. We don't have a king. Here in America, the people of the United States, we create the laws. We delegated that to ourselves. We did not delegate that to any other branch of government. The judicial branch can only create rulings, and those rulings must be consistent with positive law because the judges are tethered to positive law. They don't get to create law. So when you create a ruling and then you call it law, well, that's something that was created by a branch of government that has no authority to create law. And now we have an unconstitutional law because the judicial branch doesn't have authority to create law. Now, on the flip side, the executive branch doesn't have the authority to create law either, such as they were doing as a result of Chevron. You know, if the executive branch is not clear on what the law requires, then previously what they were doing was they would go out and write their policy based upon the ambiguity, and they would clarify it based upon their policy, and then they would go out and they would enforce the policy under Chevron. Well, we know that Chevron is now overturned, right? And that means that executive branch, you don't get to create law. You create orders, executive orders, and those orders only affect those that can be ordered. The president can't order the people because we are the sovereign. We're the ones that create the law. We're in charge. We're in the driver's seat, not the president. He's our servant. So the president makes orders, and he can only order those that work for him, right? It's the only people that can be ordered. On the judicial side, they make rulings, and the only people that are ruled are those that work for them. The judges in every state are agents of the United States Supreme Court. I'm tired of hearing this bullshit about how there's states' rights and there's a separation between the two. There is no separation between the two, and we know that from the Supremacy Clause, where it says the judges in every state shall be bound thereby anything in the Constitution or laws of any states contrary, notwithstanding. You see, these states are not sovereign. A sovereign state is defined as a state that is complete in itself, not subject to a higher government's laws. A non-sovereign state is a state not complete in itself, subject to a higher government's laws. So when the states joined the Union, they gave up their sovereignty to subject themselves to the supremacy of the United States Constitution. Every single state constitution within the first article declares that the United States Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Guys, they're trying to change our reality right now because they don't want to have to address these fucking lies that they put into place. They don't want to have an impact to their business operations, and that's what this whole thing is about. There is no dual sovereignty. You do not have a state citizenship at the same time that you have a national citizenship. You can't be in the middle of a state adjudication and be deprived of the very rights that you're guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States of America, because the only reason why a state justice system has any authority to operate is because of the sovereignty of the United States of America. If they want to call it a corporation, call it a fucking corporation. But that would mean that you have corporate charters, and that charter dictates the satellite offices. The only reason why a regional government has the authority to have a justice system is because they're operating under the licensing authority of the central government's justice system. States do not have sovereignty. They are subject to the Constitution of the United States of America. And if we don't stand up and address this and their ignorance and the shit that they're trying to do, we're not going to have a country anymore. That's what I'm fighting for. That's what I've been fighting for 9 years. I just want people to understand that if we don't defend the Constitution of the United States, we lose the United States. We lose it. But we can't, and that's why we can't give up either. You know, I'm so tired, guys. I'm tired of not having a way to get around. I'm tired of not having food. I'm tired of not having money. I'm tired of not being a fucking normal person. I can't have a wife. I can't have kids. I can't even have a fucking relationship because I'm committed to this. Because this is, and you know what? When you rob a man of all he has, you made a man with nothing to lose. I'm tired, you guys. I'm tired. We're all tired. But we can't give up, because the moment that we give up on this is the moment that we've lost this country. We can't permit those that are ignorant, right, that are focused on financial gain or focused on business sustainability and continued operations. We can't permit them to let us lose this hope, because they don't want to lose this country either. And I'm telling you right now that Senator Mark Wayne, he doesn't want to lose America. He's just too big of a pussy to fucking deal with it, right? He doesn't have the backbone to step up and say, you know what, I'm going to stand for the Constitution, right? That's not an integral person. That's not a person with good character. That's not even a leader, right? You know, and that's why I've said for a year now, is that this issue of criminality, the way we're trying to solve it from the bottom up, where we go out and arrest the people for the crimes they commit, it's never going to work. Never. It will never work. And this isn't rocket science, guys. This is simple common sense. It will never work going out and arresting the people of the United States for the crimes that they commit, because if our country is being led by criminals, and remember, the definition of a criminal is simply one that transgresses the law. That's the definition. If you transgress the law, you are, by the very definition, a criminal. It doesn't matter if that law is the Constitution of the United States or if that law is a state statute. If you transgress the law, you are a criminal. So if our country is being led by criminals, people that are refusing to recognize and enforce the body of laws governing this nation after taking an oath to do so, which crime do we want to get them on? Perjury, treason, misprision, extortion, any number of different crimes they are automatically guilty of the moment that they fail to fulfill the obligations that are constitutionally codified once they've made a promise to do so. If our country is being led by criminals, and every single one of these guys are criminals, I've shown it, guys. I've served them with the fucking notices showing them that all of your agents are all committing crimes. We've given them opportunity to be able to cure this issue and to address it, and they've chosen to do business as normal and not hear it. Well, it doesn't matter if you don't hear it. You've been made aware. And just because you ignore it doesn't make it go away. It actually makes you complicit in it due to your complacency, because every one of them have the ability to do something about this. And remember, the law is a criminal conspiracy. Any person who, having knowledge of any of the wrongs, conspire to be done, and who have the power to prevent or aid in the prevention of the commission of same, neglects or refuses to do so, may be joined as defendants in the action. We've shown over the summer, we've shown 37 state attorney generals and 37 state Supreme Courts that every single one of their agents across their states are committing crimes. Crimes that, as prescribed by law, are punishable by death. And they're doing it multiple times every single day because they're being permitted to bridge their obligations of the Constitution. Now, individually, myself included, when you take an oath to the Constitution, you have an obligation to make sure that the power that you exercise is consistent with your authority. I can't act outside of what I'm lawfully delegated authority to do. Now, when I stepped up and I realized that there were people that were warring against the Constitution domestically, I actually had a statutory obligation to do this, to step up, to self-execute the oath that I took, because I have an honorable discharge and I could be recalled into active service at any moment. Therefore, that oath is perpetual, it's binding, and it's self-executing. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. When I encounter a judge that is refusing to recognize and enforce the Constitution of the United States, and I warn him multiple times, I'm talking about you, Mr. Alexander, what the hell's your last name? Ruff. When I inform you that you're bridging the obligations that you have, and you choose to continue to do it, you are now knowingly and willingly engaging in a criminal act. Right? You were warned 4 times, extra, that you're breaking the law. I told you. You know that's a crime. And you said, I can do that. State of Washington gives me that right. I told you, no, it doesn't. You don't have the right to break the law. And I said that I demand that I have evidence that I demand this court hears, and any attempt to prevent this evidence from coming forth is a crime. And you said you will not present that evidence. You were knowledgeable. You showed your mens rea within that particular argument that we had there, the debate, in front of a jury and in front of 14 other people. You did this. So there is no immunity, guys, from a criminal act. No one is immune. Absolute immunity, judicial immunity, prosecutorial immunity, every single one of them is only immunity from civil liability. Not criminal liability, civil liability. And the reason why is because you don't sue the agent for the things that the agent does to deprive you of rights or whatever damage that occurs, because he's only doing what his master told him to do. That judge is only doing what the state laws tell him to do. But he's not smart enough to realize that the state laws don't matter. If the state laws are in conflict with the Constitution of the United States, you must obey the Constitution of the United States, because even the state constitutions within the first article have all put themselves in subjection to the Constitution of the United States of America. Every single one of them. In Washington State, it's Article 1, Section 2. United States Constitution is the supreme law of the land. That means that the state constitution is nothing. That means that you must go to the higher form of law and not rely upon the lower form of law. You see, an abuse of discretion, according to the Circuit Court handbook, you guys can all go and get it, look up abuse of discretion. There's a two-part test to determine abuse of discretion, according to the United States Circuit Court. The first test is, did the judge render a decision? Did he apply the incorrect test? Well, this is not what we're referring to. But the second part is any erroneous view of the law is an automatic abuse of discretion. Any erroneous view of the law is an automatic abuse of discretion. Now, let me tell you what an erroneous view of the law is. That in the judge's legal contemplation, that a state law that permits him to deprive you of a right guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States is in legal contemplation superior to the provisions and guarantees of the fundamental rights contained within the Constitution of the United States. That would be an obvious erroneous view of the law. Therefore, an automatic abuse of discretion has occurred. You see, the judges have to look at the hierarchy of law. They have to know that the Constitution is the supreme law. That's what you go to. And anything that's in conflict with that is unconstitutional. So if you're going to go to a state statute that says you can charge by information, not by indictment, but the Constitution of the United States says you must charge by indictment, then which law is supreme? Well, in the judge's legal contemplation, he's saying the state law is supreme. But state laws aren't supreme. State laws are in subjection to the Constitution of the United States. Guys, we are going to win this if you guys will get behind this. We need the noise now. We need you guys to help me make so much fucking noise that goddamn 9 justices in DC, that they're going to get so scared of us returning to DC with these 500,000 criminal affidavits. They're going to be so scared that they're going to sign this writ before I even fucking get there. And we're going to win without even a fight. Because if we get there with these 500,000 criminal affidavits, if we get to DC and they haven't taken action, then it's going to be too late for them. And they're going to be heading to the gallows. And you guys know this. You know this. Because those 9 justices, they're not going to be able to tell, because think about it. They don't have the backbone to tell the people of the United States about the shit that they did. You think they're going to have the guts to tell the people of the United States that they are not going to follow the Constitution? And that, hey, everybody, we don't rely upon the Constitution anymore. It doesn't exist. We're going to go off of judge-made rule. Do you think that the people of the United States is going to permit them to even make it home that night? No, man. Because every one of us are going to know that they're traitors at that point. Traitors. They've created seditious laws, right? Because sedition is the speaking or writing of words, such as law established, in order to cause disaffection to the Constitution, to procure its alteration in an other than lawful manner. If you attempt to change the Constitution in any way other than what is prescribed within the special amendment procedure of Article 6 or Article 5, you have just committed a seditious act. Sedition is altering the Constitution in other than lawful manner. So that despicable institution that we have to call honorable, those assholes that fucking are just a bunch of liars walk around in these long black robes. Guys, these guys knew that in 1833, the Marshall Court decided that they were going to suspend the Constitution in the ruling Barron versus Baltimore, and they were going to remove the fundamental rights that are guaranteed to the people by saying, oh, the states, they don't have to follow that. That's only a restriction against the federal government, not the states. And you guys understand that as of that moment, none of the Bill of Rights were guaranteed to anyone. None of them. So this is 1833. Remember, the people of the United States, we won our liberty. We declared our liberty in 1776. But then 1781, we won our independence. We won our liberty, right? We were under the belief that, hey, I got the freedom to be able to speak, right? Whatever words I see fit, right? And I have the freedom to be able to worship however way I want to, against any God that I want to. That those are my freedoms. I get to develop that conscience and develop myself. So the whole point here is that from 1776, when we declare our independence, we declare our right and freedom to be able to worship how we want, speak how we want. It wasn't until 1925 that anyone was protected by the freedom of speech. That's a fact. Because the Marshall Court decided in 1833 that they're not going to give that right to the people because the states aren't required to follow the Constitution. Guys, he did that for a very specific reason, right? He did that because Barron versus Baltimore in 1833 came out in February. The ruling was in February. In August, they established the First National Bank. Guys, we know that this is a banking system. We know it's an accounting system. We know that, right? We know this is a commercial. We know that every single crime has a quantitative amount that is assigned to it. For instance, murder is $25,000 because the courts of record can only do a maximum of $25,000. So the worst crime possible would be murder, and therefore, that's how much a murder costs. And so if you were to walk in there with a bond to be able to cover your $25,000 and you were to lose the debate, it attaches to the bond. The only reason why you go to prison is because you don't have the money to pay for the cost of that crime. And you have to sell yourself into slavery to settle the debt, and you're forced into involuntary servitude for the direct benefit of the state. But the thing is that the First National Bank, August, gets established. Now, why did Marshall have to put into place Barron versus Baltimore? Because the central government, they knew, particularly the Supreme Court, they knew what that bank was going to do. They knew that this was all a debt-based system. They knew that this was all commercial. They knew that they were going to profit off these illegal acts from the fucking beginning of all this. And they're going to do it under the auspice of justice. They're going to tell you that, oh, this is justice. No, justice is simply a term that was created by slave owners in order to preserve and protect their property. There is no justice. Read Plato's book, The Republic. He will tell you that justice is not good or bad. It's actually a compromise between two evils. Because good is evil, obviously. What we call good here in America is not all that good, right? Because they are killing people with absolute impunity, right? 139 of the 1,500 people that we put to death here in America were innocent after they were murdered. Proven to be innocent. That's not good. That's evil. They're locking people up that are innocent, and then they say, oh, it's the system. That's an acceptable deviance. This is what they're doing. That's not good. That's evil. And if good is committing evil, is it good? No, because good is incapable of producing such an act. Only evil can produce evil. So what Plato was trying to get at is that those who serve evil, right? That those that fight evil, they need to be careful that they themselves don't become evil. Because if all that they see every day is evil, then eventually they're going to come to believe that that's all that exists. And so just as Nietzsche said, those who fight monsters should see to it in the process they don't become a monster. This system has become the monster. And you know, honestly, I think it probably always was. But nonetheless, it didn't have to be. Because we could have had a just system built upon just principles of all men being equal. But our founders failed us, guys. They failed us, man. Because our founders, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, all these men that we look up to and we call honorable because they were so fucking honorable in what they did, because they started a nation where all men are equal, because the laws apply equally to all people. No, they didn't. They didn't. No, those were their words, but their actions were something completely different. That means that they're a liar. And yet we don't see this. We're still calling George Washington the greatest human character to have ever lived. That's not good human character. He was saying that he believed in all men being equal, but when it came right down to it, he didn't want to give up the business. He didn't want to give up his slaves and make all men equal. That's not a man that believes that all men are equal. And when you present the argument to me and say, oh, well, that's because they didn't see them as people, that's not true. Don't buy into that bullshit, because when George Washington died, he didn't just pass his property down to his grandson. No, he released his slaves, let them go, because he only needed them as long as they were profitable to him. He saw them as people, because if he saw them as property, he would have just passed it down to his grandson. So my point here is that we started a business. It's a business. It's a business that's based upon the industry of slavery. Because justice is nothing more than terms created by slave owners to preserve and protect their property. We know that from a number of different sources, such as the Fugitive Slave Act. A fugitive is a slave, and a slave is a fugitive. We know that from the 13th Amendment, the very amendment that was adopted and ratified by the people in 1865 after 1 million people died in a war fighting against the inequality of all men, right? We adopted it and we believed it, that it abolished slavery, but it did nothing of the sort. Not only does it permit slavery, but it codified the legality of it within our own foundational law. The very law that guarantees the freedom of all men has the ability to enslave at the same time, because it doesn't say you can't have slavery. It says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist except as punishment for crime. And the moment that you say except, it means that you can't have slavery. We just call it justice here in America. So we took something, we retitled it something different. We changed it from a private institution to a public institution. And then we said, you know what? It doesn't exist, but it does. That's why mass incarceration exists here in America. That's what's led to 800% increase in the prison population in 30 years. That's why America imprisons at a rate of 16 times more than the next closest industrialized nation. That's why we have 5% of the world's human population, but 26% of the world's prison population. Because we take the weak and the vulnerable in our society and we force them into an involuntary servitude for a for-profit state-run business for the direct benefit of the state. The state is the fucking slave owner. Slave owner. And how does that slave owner get its power? From the fucking slave traders called the judges. This is their industry. This is their business. And you know what? When you look at the attorneys as well, because you guys are calling me and you're like, oh, I would love for you to come and help. But if you're not going to do it, then I'm just going to go pay this attorney $20,000 and sell my car. Listen to me, guys. If you're going to turn to an attorney to try to solve your problems, just remember, they're incapable of such an act. This is their business. They only know how to make a person into a criminal because they were only trained in the laws that remove freedom. They are in the business of slavery. Because if the 13th Amendment made synonymous the term criminal and slave, they mean the same thing. According to America and American laws, a criminal is a slave and a slave is a criminal. Because you can be enslaved as a result of punishment for a crime. So if that's true, then that means that a person that's trained to make a person into a criminal is trained to make a person into a slave. They have degrees that they've been taught to remove freedom. They don't rely upon the Constitution because they're administrative officers of the court. Their duty isn't to the client, their duty is to the judicial machinery because they've been trained to follow judges. That's what administrative law is. When the administrative branch creates a law or a ruling and then erroneously call it law, that's administrative law. Judges don't create law, but when you call a ruling law, that is administrative law. That's why Gorsuch, right, last November, that's why he wrote the judicial notice to every single federal judge and said that most of the people in prison here in America are there illegally and unconstitutionally because the states, the courts are proceeding under administrative law and not common law. He wrote it. You guys can read it. It's available. He wrote it in his book even, Overturned or Overruled. If you guys haven't read it, go read it. I mean, he made all kinds of incriminating statements within that book. I mean, fuck, you know, he admitted all these crimes that the Supreme Court's doing. And remember, when one member of the court admits crimes, every member of the conspiracy has admitted crimes. And we already got the Supreme Court. We've already won this, you guys. We just have to make them hear it. We just have to make them concede. That's it. But Gorsuch said in that memo, November 11th, he said that most of the people in prison here in America are there illegally and unconstitutionally because the courts are proceeding under administrative law and not common law. We'll come back to this in one moment, guys. I don't want to talk about Trump quite yet because I'm going to alienate some people here, and I don't want to. I'm sorry, guys, but we're going to have to talk about what's going on because I don't want you guys to be fooled. I don't want you. You guys are right now. You guys are being fooled. It's a diversion, right? I keep talking about diversionary tactics, right? That's what our government does. It creates a diversion. It gets you looking over here so you don't realize that government's over here robbing you fucking blind. We're going to talk about that in a moment, all right? We're going to come back to Trump, right? I'm not ready for that. But Gorsuch said that the courts are proceeding under administrative law and not common law. So when the Supreme Court of the United States, right, when they create a ruling and then they call it law and then they say, here's the law, and the law now says you don't have to have an indictment, that Supreme Court amended the Constitution in an other than lawful manner. Supreme Court doesn't get to amend the Constitution. Only the people can do that. Once again, remember, sedition is the speaking or writing words such as law established in order to cause disaffection to the Constitution to procure its alteration in an other than lawful manner. In 1887, when Supreme Court Chief Justice Waite made the decision in Hurtado versus California to rely upon the state of California's inferior state statute to deprive people of the United States of the rights that are guaranteed by the Constitution by removing the indictment by grand jury requirement, he amended the Constitution in an other than lawful manner. That was sedition, done by traitors to the country. Supreme Court has no authority to amend the Constitution, and certainly not to remove an obligation that they have. How can those that are bound to obey the obligation decide to not do the obligation? No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury. Who makes the decision to hold someone over? Well, that would be the judge. That would be the judicial branch. Yes, the prosecutor can bring the incorrect charging instrument, but it's the judge that commits the crime. It's the judge that establishes the conspiracy because no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury. The prosecutor can bring the incorrect charging instrument, but it is the judge's job to make sure that the proper documentation is in place before you hold someone over. And if the judge makes the decision to hold them over, the judge committed the crime. Deprivation of rights under color of law. And he established the conspiracy by and between himself and the prosecutor when the prosecutor brought the incorrect charging instrument, and now the prosecutor is also guilty of both crimes. They've established a conspiracy. When that judge hands it off to an officer and tells the officer to go out and make the arrest, that officer is also limited in his ability to be able to take action. If he abuses his discretionary authority, his delegated authority, and goes and performs the arrest when he doesn't have the proper documentation, that doesn't negate his liability. No, he's still depriving you of a right under color of law without authority because he was negligent in making sure that the proper documentation was in place. And now he's a member of the conspiracy. Now he's committing that crime. And remember, if anyone is taken against their will and held in a place and told, if you don't pay, we're gonna keep you here, that's called kidnapping. And it's a federal offense. 1201, because you can never, ever, ever hold someone over for ransom. Because if you do, that will always be a federal offense. Always. So if you're gonna arrest me and you're gonna take me against my will and you're gonna lock me in a fucking box and then you're gonna say to me, if I don't pay you $500, you're not gonna let me go. Or if I don't sign my house over to you, you're not gonna. That's called extortion, man. The mob did that same shit. You know, they do the same shit down in fucking Brazil, down in Colombia, and we're in America. But our old leaders do the same fucking thing because they're criminals. So again, this issue of criminality, the way we're trying to solve it from the bottom up, it's never going to work. You can't solve the issue of criminality from the bottom up, because criminality is not a matter of punishment. It's not a matter. It's aberrant behavior, and the way that you correct aberrant behavior is by leading, by teaching, right? By good leadership. If my wife and I, if we create an abusive environment because we're abusive, we will produce abusive children because they're a product of their environment. And if my son is abusive because I'm abusive, then can I go to my son and say, oh, I'm now going to punish you for your abuse because I'm not looking at myself, right? I mean, wouldn't the father need to say, you know what, son, I'm sorry that I led you in the wrong direction. I'm sorry that I failed you, right? And I'm going to step up and I'm going to lead you in the right direction because I want you to go in the right way. I want to lead you in a different. So why would it not be the same for the leaders of this country? If they want to create a criminal environment by buying, selling, and manufacturing drugs, and bringing those drugs into, low-income communities through their drug task forces, through their CIs, and they're going to buy and sell, manufacture drugs within these environments so that people will come in and break the law within the environment that they created. And then they're going to say, oh, well, now you're under arrest. You're under arrest now. We're going to send you off to prison. No, that's not how that works. Because but for your crime, government, there wouldn't be fucking crime. You don't get to create a criminal environment committing crimes and then hold the people accountable for the crimes that were committed in the environment that you created. That's an inchoate crime. But for your crimes, there wouldn't be crime. When government acts unlawfully, everything it produces is unlawful. That's why what we're doing here is we're drawing a line in the sand. We've identified the constitutional parameters. We've identified that all of these agents have to obey the Constitution. And what I've done is I've drawn a line in the sand, right? Here's the line. This is what the law is. We're clearly standing on the lawful side because the Constitution is our law. That's our weapon, not yours, government. So this is what the Constitution says. These are what your obligations are. And you're clearly operating outside of those obligations. Clearly. Because when the Constitution says no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury, and you say to me there is no indictment by a grand jury, I'm going to say to you that's unconstitutional. You're on the unlawful side of the law. When government functions outside of the law, what it produces is lawless. Because there can't be guilt outside of the law. Even Scripture says that. So if government's not following the procedures and processes, the agreed upon code of conduct established by the majority, if they're not fulfilling the obligations that they have and obeying the law, then everything they're doing is unlawful, which means everything it produces is unlawful. And that's why this is such a big deal, you guys. What we have here is fucking huge. Because when the Supreme Court of the United States comes out in 1833 through the Marshall Court and the despicable shit that he said, where he said we're going to suspend the Constitution, we're not going to give the people the rights that they're guaranteed. And in 1833, he did that because he wanted to pave the way for the First National Bank, because that's what that was about. In August, they established the First National Bank. And the reason why they needed Barron v. Baltimore ruled that way was because they knew that the states were going to sue. And if the states sued, right, they were going to win because they were going to sue the central government. We didn't want a debt-based system. We didn't want the banks. We didn't want them. That's why we destroyed them, right? We're on our third one now. And look what it's done to us. It's chained us to financial institutions and foreign corporations. But nonetheless, they won it. These fucking these judges and they're all just bankers. We know that. Commercial system. So to have standing in federal court, you must, one, be people, right? Or an aggregate of the people. In the case of the state that would be suing the central government. And two, you must be directly impacted by the law. So in Barron versus Baltimore, what they said was, oh, no, that's not a restriction against the states. It's only a restriction against the central government. And so what they said there was, Constitution doesn't apply to you, states. You don't have standing in federal court. You can't sue when we put into place this national bank. And that's what they did. They established the national bank in August. And then the states tried to sue. And they said, oh no, Constitution doesn't apply to you guys. Barron versus Baltimore. Constitution doesn't apply to you. You're not directly impacted by the law. Therefore, you have no grounds for suing. You have no claim in federal court. That's why they did it. Now let me tell you right now that ruling is still standing Supreme Court precedent today. That's the reason why you don't get an indictment by grand jury, because that court has never stepped up and corrected the unlawful, unconstitutional, despicable statements and rulings of their predecessors. When Marshall denies the people of the United States the rights that they're guaranteed by failing to obey the Constitution and its supremacy, and just simply suspends statutory obligations, suspends the Constitution, and we live today in a state of suspended laws, right? That's what martial law is, guys. Where do you think that word came from, martial law? Martial law is about suspending statutory obligations. You suspend the Constitution. That theory came from Marshall, Chief Justice Marshall. It's the Marshall Court created martial law, and he created the U.S. Marshals. The reason why the U.S. Marshals is unconstitutional is because they are a law enforcement branch of government that works for the judicial branch. How could the judicial branch enforce the law? You can't have them under the authority of the judicial branch because they don't have the authority to enforce. But now you have an agency that's working for the judges and going out and doing the beck and call of the judges, committing all kinds of constitutional violations because they're enforcing the laws of the judicial branch. And once again, that's an overstepping separation of powers as well. This judicial branch is out of control. They've stepped in and they've decided that they can do all this stuff, guys. They can legislate by creating rulings. They can amend the Constitution of the United States by their judicial ruling, such as they did in Hurtado versus California, such as they did in Barron versus Baltimore, such as they did in Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad, such as they did in Hans versus Louisiana, and on and on and on. They have a long history of misreading the law intentionally in order to advance their industry and cover up the illegal acts that they've been committing. This court does not want you guys to know the truth. They don't want the people to know the truth. They know the truth. They know it. That's why they're ignoring it. They know it. That's why I'm still alive. Because they know that if they came after me, it's just going to draw attention to this issue. And they can't have that. That's the last thing they want. I can say whatever I want to say. And as long as I'm talking the truth, they can't do a damn thing to me. They have to ignore me. Because they can't call attention to this issue. If they did anything, as long as I'm talking the truth, they can't do a damn thing to me. They have to ignore me. Because they can't call attention to this issue. If they did anything to me, that would call attention to it. And by that attention, that would be maybe even enough to get the country talking about this issue. Because this is so simple and straightforward, you guys. Simple. Two issues. Two issues that we want the Supreme Court of the United States to address. One, do states have the authority to enact their own alternative legislation and substitute it for the provisions and guarantees of the Constitution of the United States of America? Do states have the right to enact their own law and replace that law with the Constitution? Absolutely fucking not. That's a rhetorical question. Doesn't even need to be answered, but you know what? Apparently this government is too fucking closed-minded or stupid or fucking, they missed their civics classes to understand that no, states do not get to fucking create their own law and then go and enforce that in violation of the Constitution of the United States of America. We know that, guys. We know that. But they apparently don't know that. Because they say, oh, that's states' rights. States have the right to be able to enact their own laws and replace them with the provisions and guarantees of the Constitution because it's the states' rights. I have a recording from senators saying that shit to me. United States senators that are unwilling to defend Article 1, unwilling to defend their own constituted duty, because no one else can amend the Constitution but the legislature. And if they are stepping up and saying, oh yeah, states can do that, they can amend the Constitution, guess what? Mark Lane, you're fucking nuts. There is no senator of Oklahoma because you just ceded your authority and your power to the states, right? If you're going to permit the states to overstep the separation of powers and do your job, and you're unwilling to stand up and defend your job, you have no job. That means that the states are more powerful than you are. You're just a fucking pussy. Every one of them are, because y'all know about it. Y'all know about it. So Barron versus Baltimore. Marshall puts into place this ruling. Says, yep, you don't get the Bill of Rights. So then from 1833, when Barron versus Baltimore was put in place, they put into place the First National Bank. It operates for a little while before Andrew Jackson, President Jackson, just demolishes it, gets rid of it. And then we end up with another one down the road. But nonetheless, what happens then is that from 1833 until 1925, no one is protected by any of the guarantees of the Bill of Rights. Freedom of speech, freedom of press, indictment by grand jury, right to confront your accuser, cruel and unusual punishment, all these things that you believe that you have because you can read the goddamn Constitution yourself and you can see that it says right there. For some reason, we didn't get those. For some reason. And you fast forward to 1925. Then 1925 happens, and now a case called Gitlow versus New York comes forward. Gitlow versus New York. And in that particular ruling at the United States Supreme Court, they said that the freedom of speech is protected against interference by the states because it's codified in the Constitution's text. So the freedom of speech is protected against interference because it's codified in the Constitution's text. Great. We have it because it's written in the Constitution. But wait a second, did we have that in 1776 when we declared our freedom to speak? Or didn't we have that in 1787 when we adopted and ratified the Constitution of the United States of America with the Bill of Rights? Seems to me like we would have always had it, right? Why is it in 1925 the Supreme Court's having to come out and say, oh yeah, you got the freedom of speech? Okay, what about the other ones? What about the right to confront your accuser? Do you have that? Oh no, you only have freedom of speech in 1925. That's all. You only get that. You don't get all of them, even though all of them are written and enumerated in the Constitution. You only get that one. See, this is when they started what was called the incorporation doctrine. Okay, I'll hit the where to send the affidavits in a moment because we're going to talk about that because I don't know quite yet. Every single post office is refusing to send or refusing to deliver. Guys, they're doing that as another diversion to try to break up, in here. They're trying to damage my credibility, and that's okay. And I'm going to tell you why in a moment. We'll come back to that, all right? I want to finish this incorporation doctrine because I've been trying to get this across to everybody. So 1925, Gitlow versus New York says that you have the freedom to speak, and that's protected. States can't interfere with your freedom to speak. But that started the incorporation doctrine. And the incorporation doctrine was one at a time, as cases came forward, they would hear the case that was related to one of the provisions of the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, and then they would side to incorporate it. So for instance, 1958, Miranda versus Arizona, your right to not self-incriminate. No person shall be compelled in any criminal case to act as a witness against himself. Miranda came forward and said, hey, man, I was compelled to act as a witness against myself because of the threats, to coercion, duress that the police were giving me. The Supreme Court said, oh, yeah, you can't do that because that's codified in the Constitution. It's enumerated. Now, all of a sudden, we are guaranteed our right to not be able to self-incriminate, forced into, compelled through threats of intimidation. Great, okay. Then 1969, Duncan versus Louisiana. Duncan versus Louisiana was the right to a trial by jury. Right? Duncan came forward and said, hey, man, they're telling me I don't get a trial by jury, but it says it right here in the Constitution I do. So he brought it to Supreme Court. Ask the Supreme Court, do I get trial by jury? It says it right here, I do. Supreme Court said, yeah, you do. Yeah, it's right there, you get it. It's incorporated. The last provision to have been incorporated was in 2019. And it was the excessive fines clause of the Eighth Amendment. So 2019, we are still incorporating the rights that are written in our fucking face. Right there. We can open up the Constitution and say, why don't I have the freedom of speech? It says right here, I got it. It was incorporated by the Supreme Court in 1925. I got it. Then why am I still being abridged it? So in 2019, Timms versus Indiana comes forward. Says, hey man, they're trying to give me excessive fines. And is it protected? Because it says that it is under the Eighth Amendment. Supreme Court said, yeah, it is. You're protected. But in their ruling, what they said is the privileges and immunities of United States citizens are at a minimum those enumerated within the Bill of Rights, given their legal effect against interference by the states because of their codification in the Constitution's text. Now, the privileges and immunities of United States citizens are at a minimum what is written in the first 10 amendments to the Bill of Rights. At a minimum. That's what you get at a minimum. No one can take them away because those are the privileges and immunities of United States citizens. Protected through the 14th Amendment, which states that no state shall create or enforce any law that shall abridge the privileges and immunities of United States citizens. So when you rely upon the privileges and immunities clause of the 14th Amendment for incorporation, all you got to do is identify any one of the rights that are written and enumerated within the first 10 amendments, and that's at a minimum what you must be given. No state can create or enforce any law that abridges any one of those rights. See, the Supreme Court messed up in 2019. They spoke a little ahead of themselves. But that particular ruling is in our favor because they stated in a unanimous decision with 6 of the judges that we still have on the court right now today that, hey, if it's written in the first 10 amendments, you get it at a minimum. No state can take it away because no state can create or enforce any law that shall abridge the privileges and immunities of United States citizens. The privileges and immunities of United States citizens are at a minimum those enumerated within the Bill of Rights because of their codification in the Constitution's text. My point here is that in 1925, the Supreme Court of the United States started the incorporation doctrine. And they started with the freedom of speech. And they said, yep, it's preserved. You get that because the Constitution guaranteed it. We're obligated to give that to you. And from 1925 until 2025, we still don't have all the rights that are in the Bill of Rights. You know why? Because there's one provision left to be incorporated. One provision left. And that's the grand jury clause of the Fifth Amendment. This is the last one that we have to incorporate. The last one. Every other one has been incorporated. This is the last one. That's what we got to lose right now. Because this court has been trying its damnedest for 243 years to advance their industry of slavery, to preserve and protect their property by removing the guarantees that we have to keep ourselves fucking free. What is the purpose of the Constitution? It is to establish rights and limit powers. People have rights, government has powers. Those powers are specifically limited in order to preserve the individual liberties of the people. But that fucking court from the very beginning said, you know what? If the Constitution got its way, we're all going to be out of a job. We don't want the Constitution to get its way. And they put into place rulings from the very fucking beginning because they're nothing but a bunch of fucking slave owners, right? And they put into place rulings that were undermining the Constitution and undermining the Union so that they could create hostility, so they can create conflict, so they can create crime because they're fucking criminals. So if our country is being led by criminals, people are acting outside of the law, then that means our country is going to be led toward criminality. And that's going to produce an environment of crime, which is going to produce a society of criminals. We are simply following our leaders, right? That's why crime can't be fought from the bottom up. That's why my church logo is fighting crime from the top down. Because before we can deal with the criminality of people, We must first ensure we got leaders that are going to lead our country in a lawful direction out of love, faith, obedience in the law, and respect for the will of the people and the obligations that they have. They're delegated by the people. And until we have that, we are not going to be going in a good direction. We cannot produce a good citizenry. And if our country is being led by criminals, then they are acting outside of the law, and there cannot be guilt where there's lawlessness. That's why we can discharge the whole fucking debt. Because you know what? As long as you criminals are leading us, you can't find us guilty of anything. Because where government acts outside of the law, what it produces is unlawful. You can never have an unlawful act or crime committed by government that's going to result in a lawful outcome. Until that Supreme Court of the United States steps up and does the fucking honorable thing and tells the truth about the despicable fucking traitors that have sat on that court, then they themselves are traitors. Because they know about it and they're permitting it to continue by ignoring this. But they're not going to get away from it, right? This is not going to go away. We have the opportunity right now. To hold that court accountable for the disgusting shit that they did to pit the people against each other through racial discourse, through economic discourse. They are creating the conflict so that they can create the crime. They're responsible for it. Because if the Constitution got its way, we would have equal respect for every person. And the reason why violence exists is because people don't respect each other. But if the laws applied equally, we would have peace. We would have harmony. The situations that we're in today are the result of the practices of those that are seeking to dissolute us, right? They're seeking the destruction of us because of the first 28 justices that served on that fucking court. 22 of them owned their own slaves, including Chief Justice Marshall. So when Chief Justice Marshall comes out in 1833 and says, yep, I don't want any of my slaves to have any of these rights, so we're not going to give them because the states. As of that moment, they amended the Constitution. They directed every court within the purview of the United States of America that they don't have to follow the Constitution, right? And by the introduction of that fraud that permeated every single court across the country, because all these courts follow the edict of the highest court in the land, when they produced a fraudulent ruling that changed the Constitution in an other than lawful manner, that sent all the states out and all the state courts acting unconstitutionally and denying you your right to confront the hearsay evidence that was against you in a fair and neutral proceeding with a fair and neutral decision maker, also known as a grand jury. You were not being treated as though you were innocent. You're being treated as though you were guilty. Because the right to the presumption of innocence starts with you cannot be held to answer for capital or otherwise if it's crime unless on presentment or indictment of grand jury. You may not be arrested until the people of the United States has determined that there is sufficient probable cause to assume that a crime has been committed, and that cannot occur until you get the opportunity to tell your side of the fucking story. So when government decides that they're going to listen to one side and then they're going to intentionally suppress the other side from telling theirs, we do not know that truth has been ascertained or justice has been administered. Because truth will always lie somewhere between two stories. You have a story to tell, just like that fucking accuser did. We don't know which one's lying. That's up to the people to decide. And you never got that opportunity. 98% of all criminal defendants don't get that opportunity. 99% of all accused don't get that. And then we wonder why innocence suffers here in America. We wonder why we're running these slavery institutions. We're doing it because of the decisions that were made by this disgusting institution that we call honorable. There's no honor in those motherfuckers, man. None. And unless they step up and decide to obey the established law, then they're traitors. And they deserve to be hanging from the gallows. Every fucking one of them. Because they're destroying this country. They're destroying families. They're stealing property. They're destroying marriages. They're robbing kids. They're putting us into fucking guardianships in a prison, right? Calling us bad so that they can rob from the SQV. Because when you go into a guardianship, right? Because that's what prison is. You're taken into custody They have custody of you. They are your custodian, right? They take a guardianship of you and they put you into that institution because you can't take care of yourself. And once you're in a guardianship, who is your guardian? Well, that would be the Attorney General. Okay, right? So the Attorney General. And while you're in that guardianship, he is responsible for your health and welfare needs, right? Just like any other guardian. So every single cent that you get in profit, in interest on your SESQV, where do you think that goes? He can't touch the trust money. We all know that. But if they give you life without parole, you will never, ever, ever be able to touch any of that SESQV ever again. Therefore, every single cent that you make in interest, your guardian can take it. That's his. Guys, there's so much money that these fucking people are stealing from us. You guys, you have no idea. And herein lies the issue now with Mr. Trump, guys. Why the fuck do we care about the money? It's fucking nothing. It's 3 cents. It doesn't matter. $100 bill, it's nothing. It's worthless. It means nothing. So why are we fucking out here spending time worrying about the money? It's the people that needs the Constitution. The money is fucking nothing. The money is absolutely nothing. It's garbage. Yes, it's nice to know who's fucking corrupt, but I'll tell you what, why are we not fixing the fucking problem, Mr. Trump? Because you are responsible for those prosecuting attorneys. And you say to us, all of us, that you are going to put the Constitution back in its foundation, and yet on Friday, your prosecutors were still out charging by way of information. They were still out arresting people without an indictment by grand jury, and you're responsible for that, Mr. Trump. You're responsible for that, for their fucking actions. So it seems to me like that's business as normal. But all of you are looking at this and saying, oh my God, Mr. Trump, you're going after the judges. You're calling them out because they're all administrative judges. Why aren't you fucking calling him out? His prosecutors on Friday were still out all across this country charging by information in direct violation of the Constitution. And you're going to call him great because he's fucking fixing the con? No, he's not. When he came into office, the first thing that he did on day one was he expanded the private prison contract. That's not someone that intends to put the Constitution back in its foundation. That's not someone that intends to reduce the amount of fucking people in prison because they're unlawfully and illegally imprisoned. That's someone that's fucking signed a contract to expand the prison system with the private contracts. Geo Group, Core Civic. Words and actions must align. If they don't, you're a liar. He might fucking change, guys. I hope he does. I pray that he does. I fucking hope. And I hope that I'm wrong. But guys, I've been trained to fucking sniff out liars. That's what I fucking did when I worked for the intelligence, right? You guys know this. Words and actions must align. You can say that you believe in something, but if you surround yourself with the exact same people, with the exact same technical expertise, then don't think that anything's going to change. He's surrounding himself with attorneys once again. Where is the other technical expertise? This is just more of the same. An attorney is trained to remove freedom. And when you take an attorney and you put an attorney in the highest law enforcement officer position and you expect him to enforce the law, guys, my degree is law enforcement. Substantive law is law enforcement. There should not be an attorney, an adjective law professional within law enforcement. They don't know how to enforce the law. All they know how to do is make someone into a fucking criminal. We don't need a bunch of attorneys still continuing to advance this fucking industry because the attorneys are the problem. And until they own up to what they built, until they're willing to actually fix this problem, then they are the problem. Because they are relying upon something that's not law. They're telling us to go to judge-made ruling and to follow it, to follow administrative law, because they follow judges. That's why they're administrative officers of the court, because they follow administrative law. Why do you think that when you go into a courtroom and they're trying to deprive you of your fundamental constitutional rights, why don't you go to the law that protects your fundamental constitutional rights to defend yourself? Why do they go to judgment? You never argue Constitution in a fucking issue where your constitutional rights are being violated. If you walked in there and you even cited the Constitution, you'd be laughed out of the fucking courtroom. Or that judge would say, oh, we don't, Constitution doesn't apply here. It doesn't matter if they were administrative officers, hearings officers. Guys, that's a delusion. That's what they want. They're creating these diversions. They're getting you guys talking about things, looking at things that aren't important. What's important is how they portrayed themselves. If I walk up to you on the street with a water gun and I point that water gun at you and I say, if you don't give me your money, I'm going to shoot you. If you believe that that water gun is a gun and we formulate that contract, I'm going to prison for robbery because you interpret it as a gun. It doesn't matter if it's a water gun. If you thought it was real, it's fucking real. So when they have an administrative officer walk in the courtroom and portray himself as a judge, if you believe that he's a judge, he's a fucking judge. He's not a hearings officer or shit. He's a judge. Don't let them transfer this over to the executive branch. Those people were working for the Supreme Court. Hold the Supreme Court accountable. The Supreme Court is responsible for the fucking actions of the judges. Don't let them pass this off as administrative officers. That's what they're trying to do. They want you to fucking to call them hearing officers under the president because they gave the fucking president immunity over the summer. Those fucking judges work for the Supreme Court. They are agents of the Supreme Court. Don't let the Supreme Court get over on this. If you guys permit this to be administrative officers, you're transferring them under Trump, and you know what? Trump was named immune. They gave him fucking immunity, and that's the quid pro quo that happened on the 4th of July. That's why I left DC, because I knew about the... Guys, don't let them do that. When government tells you something, know that it's a diversion. Don't let them send you in a diversion. You gotta stay focused, right? You gotta understand that the direction the government leads us is not the fucking right direction. Don't buy into this bullshit. Don't do it. They're attorneys. They're trying to preserve this industry and they're trying to protect the Supreme Court. Because the Supreme Court can take this whole fucking thing down because of the crimes that they've committed. Think about 1925. 1925, Gitlow versus New York comes out. And all of a sudden, the Supreme Court says, oh yeah, freedom of speech is protected against interference. You know what happened right then? The Congress, the United States Congress said, wait a second now. What do you mean that freedom of speech is protected? What are you talking about? It's always been protected. And they found out in 1925, the United States Congress did, they found out that for the last 160 years, no one had been given any of the rights guaranteed and enumerated within the Bill of Rights. And Congress said, oh, fuck, that's a big fucking deal, man. I didn't know that because I live in this little la land of freedom and, and I don't know what the low people are going through because I don't live in that world. I'm above them. But nonetheless, they learned in 1925 that for 160 years, the Supreme Court has been denying the people of the United States the very rights that we gave to ourselves, preserved and enumerated within the Bill of Rights, first 10 amendments. Supreme Court said, oh, that's a big deal, man. That's a big deal. In fact, that's such a big deal, we don't want to have to fix this, right? So they did two things in something known as the Judicial Reform Act of 1925. See, Congress produced 4 months after the release of Gitlow versus New York, after Congress realized and learned that all of these rights that are in the Bill of Rights, that they're not protected because the Supreme Court of the United States directed all the courts not to follow it. They said, you know what, we gotta address this, right? Because this is too big of a deal. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make you a court of discretion, right? Not just the Supreme Court, but all the state Supreme Courts. All Supreme Courts are now courts of discretion. Meaning they can use their discretion to pick and choose which cases they want to hear or not hear. So from now on, if one of these big cases come up, you don't have to hear it because you're now a court of discretion. We're giving you the ability to use your discretion to not listen to cases that are too big to fix. Guys, what that did, that was Congress that amended Article 3 through legislative fiat. Article 3 says, in all cases in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. That is an obligation for the United States Supreme Court to hear any case in which a state is a party. Doesn't matter if it's me versus a state or the state versus me. If the state is named a party, Supreme Court has original jurisdiction in all cases in which a state shall be party. That's a decision already made by the United States Supreme Court, the very first court case that they ever heard. In Chisholm versus Georgia, Chisholm versus Georgia. In Chisholm, they already made that decision. Yes, if a state's named a party, Supreme Court is the only court. They are original jurisdiction, which means that they have to hear it first. No other court in the country can hear a case if they're not the court of original jurisdiction. That means that the Supreme Court is not just a court of appellate jurisdiction, but they also have original jurisdiction as well. So why is it then that they're not hearing the cases in which the state is named a party? Could it be because they're abusing their discretion because the United States Congress told them that they could in 1925? But wouldn't that mean that Congress amended the Constitution in an other than lawful manner? It would seem to me that if we invoked Article 3 and demanded that the court fulfill its original jurisdiction obligation, I'm not asking you, Supreme Court, I'm telling you, you fucking have to do it because here's your obligation. And you can choose to either breach your constitutional obligation and thus create a public wronging for every American. You can tell every American that you're not going to follow the Constitution, or you can ignore it, abusing your discretion under the authority of the United States Congress, which you can't do either, but you're doing it anyway. Or you can fucking do your job, fulfill your obligations, be men and women of integrity and honor, and just fucking give the people the rights that you have denied them for 243 fucking years because you're a bunch of pieces of shit. I mean, those are really the only three options you got, because we're going to make sure that people know about this shit. You guys can only keep this fucking quiet for so long. So the first thing that they did, Congress did, was they made the court a court of discretion. You can use your discretion. Now pick and choose. No, you can't. Because if I come into that court and I invoke Article 3 under the authority of a person in the United States of America, I can, because remember, no person shall be held to answer, right? In all cases in which a state shall be party. The Constitution is pretty clear. There's no interpretation on that, and especially not when we have the words of Alexander Hamilton in Federalist Number 80, especially when we have the words of James Madison in Federalist Number 10, especially when we have the words of John Jay in Martin versus Hunter's Lessee, especially when we got the words of the Automatic Recusal Code, Title 28, subsection 455. Everything is in our favor. That the Supreme Court must oversee the disposition of a dispute anytime the state is named party. A state cannot bring an accusation against you and then also be the judge in that same dispute. Because the body of men that make up the state cannot be presumed to be neutral and unbiased when the judge works for the fucking plaintiff. And the plaintiff is bringing an accusation through the prosecutor. And the judge and prosecutor work for the same fucking entity. That's a separation of powers issue. It was written and documented within Article 3 that if the state brings an accusation against you, the United States of America must be the judge, because the federal judicial authority of the Union must extend, according to Alexander Hamilton in the Federalist Number 80. But that's not what was supposed to happen, because where we started out here, guys, what you're hearing is that all of these state laws, right? They don't impact us. I've been saying that for years, guys. No state were meant to create a law. No laws were to be created by the states, because the Constitution of the United States of America, Clause 1, Article 1, says all legislative power is vested in a Congress of the United States consisting of a Senate and a House of Representatives. All legislative power is vested in a Congress of the United States. That means that all power to create law, because that's what legislation is, all power to legislate is vested in a Congress of the United States here in this union. Because states are not sovereign. Because states don't have the authority to be able to create a law and then treat people differently because of their geographical preferences. Because here in a union, we were coming together with a representative government to create the laws centrally and then federate them out to each of the regional governments for application and administration. That's what a federal government is, a federation of systems. So the central government creates the laws, and then we can have a neutral, unbiased judge at the state level because he doesn't represent the entity that created the laws. So if the United States of America brings the laws, then the state gets to be the judge, because the judge and the lawmaker are different governments, different, answering to different people, different entities. One is a state, not federal. The other is federal. There's your separation of powers. But if the states created their own laws, our founders fucking already predicted that. They were already ready for it. And that's why that in all cases in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. The only court that can oversee the disposition of a dispute between a state and the citizens thereof, according to Alexander Hamilton, Federalist Number 80, is the federal judicial authority. The federal court must be the court to oversee a dispute if a state is bringing the accusation. Because according to James Madison, the father of the Constitution, the one who wrote the Bill of Rights, all of it, we know this, no man ought certainly be judged in his own case. Because his interest would most certainly bias his judgment and not improbably corrupt his integrity. With equal, nay, with greater reason, a body of men are unfit to be both judge and party at the same time. See, states cannot be, and they were never intended to be, both party and judge of the same cause because of the bias, prejudice, and partiality that would ultimately transpire as a result of it. States cannot be both accuser and judge, or else innocents will suffer, such as they are today. You can't have the same body of men called the state that has a whole bunch of different parts that includes legislators, includes judges, prosecutors, CPS. You can't have that body of men create what is or is not aberrant behavior. Investigate what is or is not aberrant behavior. Bring an accusation against what is or is not aberrant behavior. Judge what is aberrant behavior. And then profit off of that aberrant behavior. Where is the separation of powers? Where is the neutral, unbiased decision maker? Where's the jury? Where's the people? Why is it that a prosecutor and a judge gets to decide who's going to go to prison and who's not? 98% of the time. It's all illegal. Everything that they've done, everything they've built is illegal. States' laws don't impact people in the United States. Because as a citizen of the United States, I reside outside of the limited or statutory governing limits of a state. I reside at a federal level. That state is below me. I don't reside within a state unless I subject myself to those state laws through contracts. Unless I change my legal relationship with the state and I agree that I'm going to obey the state laws, that state has no jurisdiction over me because I'm a federal person. I reside at the federal level, and that federal constitution is outside of the state's limited or statutory governing limits. We live in a situation, a world now, that's so much different from what we believe, and yet we're going along with it. Going along with what we're seeing on the news, guys. You guys are so happy about what they're fucking doing with DOJ. Oh, they're going after the ALJs. Guys, you're permitting them to fucking put you into that diversion, right? They're telling you to look over here because they're fucking robbing you over here. They're already setting shit up, right? And if you don't anticipate what they're doing, you're not gonna be ready. And you're gonna be fooled because the government has led you in these directions time and time again. And you've got to learn how to anticipate those and question it and address, those diversions. I'm an expert in diversions. I know what they're doing. I know what they're doing every time. Because I was taught to do it. You got to look at words and actions. They can say that they're going to put the Constitution at the foundation, but if they decide to sign a contract with the private prison systems to expand it, that is not putting the Constitution back at the foundation. They can say that they're going to put the Constitution back at the foundation, but if they are directing their agents to obey the Constitution, then they're not putting the Constitution back at the foundation. They could say that they're going to put the Constitution back at its foundation, but then when they sign an executive order green lighting the advancement of the executions within the federal system, they're not putting the Constitution back at the foundation. Anybody who has been involved in the injustice of this system, they know that injustice has a profound effect on us. And it causes us to change who we are and how we are. We become a completely different person because of that injustice. Because something's become real to us. And I haven't met one single fucking person yet who has experienced the injustice of the United States justice system and not left willing to fight and die for that, and become an advocate and fight for those people that they know are being oppressed, because this is not okay with us. It will never fucking be okay with us. So I have to wonder, why is it that Trump would not step up and defend the 70 million people who he knows have been had a witch hunt against them the same way that he did, who didn't have the opportunity to be present in the grand jury to confront the hearsay evidence that was against him. And as a result, they were able to prosecute him for fucking whatever they wanted. And he had no ability to be able to defend himself because he was already presumed guilty based upon the mere fact of being charged with a crime. Why is it that that injustice didn't change him? Change me? Fucking change me. I could never go back and see something that that's why I stand up and I'm not going to let you guys fucking do this to these people anymore. You're going to fucking have to come through me. And they may very well do it. But my question is how can you experience injustice and not fucking step up and say, I'm going to put the Constitution back to the foundation because I'm responsible for those prosecutors who are all choosing the incorrect charging instrument. If he wanted to fix this problem, all he's got to do is just tell his fucking workers to obey the Constitution and the Constitution back to the foundation. Because that courtroom, you can't do shit without the executive officers doing their job. That judge has no power. You don't got to send an order out to them. You don't got to arrest them. You don't got to do anything. All you got to do is say, my workers don't go into work. Don't fucking obey. It's as simple as that. You can fix the whole problem by just fucking directing your workers to obey the law. It could be as easy as that. You don't have to put out letters and all this other shit and tell the whole fucking country what amazing fucking shit you're doing. No. Sometimes it's best to just fucking fix the problem. Care about the people. Because when you run government so it's a business, then that means that you're going to make decisions that are going to be in the best fiscal interest of the country and not what's in the best societal interest of the country. And this is the danger that we have of taking a businessman and putting him in charge of our corporation when we don't want it to be a corporation. Government's not a business. This is not a fucking business. Justice is not a business. But if you're going to run it as though it's a business and you're going to focus on the financial issues of the business, then guess what? They're going to make decisions that are in the best interest of the fiscal requirements of the business and not what's in the best societal interest of the country. That's why I said that government's not a business. We've got to get the business out of government because government is here to help the people, not fucking rob from the people. But if you're going to run government as though it's a business, then every business must produce revenue. They must produce a product and they must pay liabilities. All three of which this government doesn't do. Do they pay liabilities? Absolutely not. Do they generate revenue? Yeah, they steal from us. Do they make a product? Absolutely. They're called slaves. That's not a business. It's a lie to continue to call it a business. Because when we call government as a business, then we all have all these people that say, oh, it's too big to fall. Because when we call government as a business, then we all have all these people that say, oh, it's too big to fall. It's necessary that we prop that up because it's holding the health and well-being of our, no, it's not. It's fucking draining us of our, it doesn't do any good because it's not a business, man. We shouldn't be looking at the business aspects of government because government's not a business. And when you come in, the first thing that you should do, government, is you should restore the liberties of the people. Because your job is to protect the people, protect their rights. That's your job, government. We don't give a fuck about your money. That's the whole point. The money is worthless. It's nothing. It has no value. It's not even fucking the people's. It's a goddamn banks. It's nothing. It's debt. Why are we out wasting our time talking about that? You guys, he's bribing you with $5,000 to get you to fucking be okay with the money system. Don't you know that $5,000, it's nothing. It's fucking garbage. Why are you going to be all droopy fucking and excited about, guys, they're bribing you, man. They're trying to get you looking over here so they can bring the same fucking system back in and say, oh, it's different now. We're so close to fixing this. Stay strong. Don't buy into delusions and recognize that when government points you in one direction, know that criminals, you don't want to follow them. And recognize that when government points you in one direction, know that criminals, you don't want to follow them. Cash and Bondi, they're both attorneys. Both of them are attorneys. And there isn't a single attorney in this fucking country that is not committing perjury. Not one. So we already know that they're both criminals. And they will remain criminals until such time as they choose to return to the established rule of law. And if they don't, then they are fucking criminals and they will always be criminals. Because perjury is the effect of failing to fulfill the promise that you made. If they're serious about it, then put the Constitution back at the foundation, obey the fucking law, and that means that you better stop immediately prosecuting people or arresting people without lawful authority. Because if you don't, you're permitted to continue. And that means you're fucking criminals. You're misprisoned, you're part of the criminal conspiracy. There is no black and white. If you're gonna fucking rely upon a judge-made ruling to take away something that you're guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States, you committed perjury. You're a fucking criminal. Kash is a criminal. I don't care if anybody dislikes that. He's a fucking criminal. He's fucking committing perjury. That's the effect. He's already implicitly invited punishment for failing to fulfill the promise that he made. If you guys don't like it, I'm sorry. But when you swear an oath, there's only two ways to get out of the criminal conspiracy. You either, one, notify the authorities of the crimes being committed. But if you are the authorities, that doesn't do any good. Or two, you must notify your co-conspirators of your intent to no longer participate. But that must be done by some affirmative action. If you take on, as the Attorney General, a position, and then you permit your Attorney Generals in the states and all your prosecutors to continue to charge by way of information, not by indictment, by relying upon an inferior state law that derives from a fucking unconstitutional judge-made ruling, then guess what? You are committing perjury. Whether you know it or not, you're already fucking guilty. You've already implicitly invited punishment if you fail to fulfill that promise. So the only way you get out of it is by telling your fucking workers to stop breaking the law. That's the only way you get out of it. And guess what? We got 2 more weeks of fucking business as normal. But they want you looking over here at the money. They want you looking over here at the judicial branch so you don't see what they're fucking doing. You can't just continue to point your fingers and say, judges, you breaking the law, and then you continue to break the law. Because that's a liar. Your words and your actions don't align. You're going to accuse someone of your wrongdoing. All you're doing is projecting what you yourself are doing. Guys, look at the actions. Don't buy into the bullshit. Get smart here. And make sure that you guys start questioning the things the government's doing. Because this government is not on your side. I don't give a shit who they are. And until their actions align with their morals, align with their words, and they put the Constitution back to the foundation and stop fucking pissing around, stop talking about all these other things that don't fucking matter. Nobody cares about the money. They're drawing you into something that, guys, don't give a, the money's nothing. The money is what's got you all sleeping for 240 years because they dangled that shit in front of you so you're chasing after this money. You don't realize that it's the government that's been robbing you of everything. They're the antagonist. It's not the people. It's not race. But they'll tell you it is because racism is simply a diversion to pit the people against each other. Because as long as black and white are fighting, as long as woman and man are fighting, we don't realize that it's the government that's the real antagonist because we're over here fighting. We're looking over here and they're over here robbing us. When they tell you to look in one direction, I would advise you to look in the opposite way from now on. Until they mitigate their criminality, you must presume that they're criminals. And if you want to follow criminals, don't be surprised if you yourself are going to become a criminal. I don't follow criminals anymore. I stick with the Constitution. And that means that I know the criminals because I can see the direction they're going and it ain't the direction I'm going. If you're going a different way from me, I know where you're going and I know who you're following. I don't want you guys to do that anymore. Don't follow criminals. Don't follow criminals' laws. We're going to follow the laws that set free. We're going to follow the Constitution of the United States because that is going to be going in a good direction. That is going to lead us out of these problems. Because you know what? Judges are leading us toward their shit. They're leading us out of these problems. Because you know what? Judges are leading us toward their shit. They're leading us in an unlawful direction because they're following something that is not law. And if we continue to follow them, we continue to obey what they tell us to do. If we continue to pay these attorneys for post-conviction relief, don't be surprised if you end up fucking criminal yourself because you're following criminals. Those aren't my leaders. Let's follow the Constitution. Come with me. We're going to get us out of here. We're going to follow the one law, the only law that's constitutional. When they bring up an argument to us, they tell us, oh, Title 28, 255, I'm going to say no. Clause 1, Amendment 5. When they tell us fucking the statute, I'm going to say no. Clause 1 of Amendment 5. When they say, oh, yeah, but district court has to say, fuck you. Clause 1 of Amendment 5. Because I'm going to stick on that highest law. That's the only thing that's constitutional. Anything that's not that is unconstitutional. And when you get that into your head, we're going to walk the fuck out of here. We're going to get to that pre-side. I promise you, that's how we're going to get there. You got to stop listening to them. You got to stop doing what they're telling you to do because they're leading you in the wrong direction. Don't go that way. Fuck their statutes. Fuck their judge-made rulings. Fuck their acts of Congress. Fuck their state statutes. None of that matters against the Constitution. Rely on it. Focus on it. And don't think about anything else. When you get on the highest form of law, when you get into your elevated position, do not come down from that elevated position to fight down in the weeds where they want you to. You maintain that high position. And when you do, you will have superior tactical capability over your enemies. That's where you win. Every single military philosophy says that if you hold high ground, you have the superior tactical capability. Get up on the highest form of law and don't come back down off of it, okay? Stand up there, stay up there, draw them up to your level, and when you get them up there, you will take them down because they can't fight at your level. They can only fight at their level. But you don't have to go to their level because you can stick on the highest form of law and nothing else. If you continue to draw them to you, they can't fight at your level, and you will win. If an attorney's telling you to go one way, don't follow that motherfucker. Don't pay him $20,000. Save your money. Send me $1. Help me help you because we only have to win one fight, you guys. Going back to the very beginning, we're almost done here. The whole point here is there is 2.9 million people currently in prison here in America. Every single one of them was illegally and unconstitutionally arrested because they didn't follow the rules to do it. Every single one of them started out their journey down injustice based upon an arrest. Every single one of them had an arrest. Now, Johnny over here, well, Johnny had some issues with his evidence. He wants to talk about that. Now, Paul over here had a biased judge. He wants to talk about that. Now, Tom over here, he didn't get fed breakfast twice, so he wants to talk about that. You know, this other guy over here, he doesn't know he just wants to talk about something, anything. He doesn't care. He was all just fucked up. So we got all these people that want to talk about all these other issues. Wants to talk about this. And these attorneys are more than happy to talk about those things. Because they don't want you to realize that all of those issues started with an unconstitutional arrest. And that unconstitutional arrest is the same unconstitutional arrest for all 2.9 million people. So the attorneys are more than happy to get you off by yourself so they can rob $20,000 from you and put in paperwork that you only have got a 3% chance of winning because you're weak by yourself. And they don't want you to realize that if you came together, 2.9 million people talking about the one thing that affects every single one of you, and it's the very first step at that, every single person has an arrest, and that arrest is unconstitutional. Y'all talk about that point. And guess what happens then? You got a massive number of people addressing one single fucking problem. And the same problem affects everyone. And if we overcome that one fucking issue, if we're able to show that yes, they didn't have the authority to arrest us because they didn't have the proper documentation in place, because we got the numbers to be able to prove that, we got the numbers to put the attention on that. If we overcome any one of the petitioners in the procedural situation, if one petitioner overcomes, they all overcome. It's called vicarious relief. That's why I'm saying that you guys, when you guys call me up and you guys ask me to do a post-conviction relief for you, you want me to get you out of prison? Good. Come with me. I'll show you how the fuck to get out. But you got to do it my way, man. We're going to talk about what affects all of us so we can get the attention on it, so we can have the power to fix the fucking problem. I can't do it by myself. And I certainly can't win a million fights out here. I want to get all of you out of fucking prison. I don't want any one of you to be in there. No one was meant to be a slave. But we got to do it together. Because we got the power and the numbers. Every single person in prison today can talk about what I'm talking about. And when you guys talk about that, what you're going to do is you're going to push me into that court. And that court's going to have to hear this fucking... They're going to let me debate this. And when they do, I'm going to fucking secure your liberty. Because not one of you had a constitutional arrest. And there's no denying it. And that court will have to side with you. Have to. Because it's not about how many people are going to get it. It's about me versus that court. Me versus that court. That's all we're going to talk about is me versus that court. Is that court committing a crime? Yes, they are. Okay, doesn't matter whether behind me, the decision for me is going to affect 10 million people. That doesn't matter. What matters is me and the issue. Does the state have the right to be able to abridge the constitutional rights because the Supreme Court directed them through amending the Constitution in an unlawful manner? Guys, they don't want this debate. That's why they're silent on it, because they know they're going to lose. So how do we get the win? You guys get behind this, man. Every one of you had an arrest, and that arrest was unconstitutional. There's no fucking way of dicing that any other way than the state created a law that either one, permitted their prosecutors to abuse their discretion so that they can pick and choose who gets right and who does not, or they abuse their discretion by relying upon an inferior law that permits them to break the superior law. Either way, that's on them. And either way, that's unconstitutional and illegal. Doesn't matter how we dice it. Even if they tell us that the 14th Amendment wasn't ratified, which is another diversion, even if they tell us that, then we're going to say, great. Then that means that when Hurtado versus California relied upon the 14th Amendment, Provision 1, to formulate it, then that means that good. If you're going to tell us the 14th Amendment doesn't exist, Hurtado doesn't exist then. We get the indictment by a grand jury. Either way, guys, we win. But the way we win is we have to make us hear them. We have to make them hear us. That's all we need. That's what stands between us and your liberty. We got to get that court to hear us. And I need you to amplify my voice. I need you to talk about what affects all of you, because when we stand up and we defend the rights of those around us, we gain our civil rights at that point in time. You don't get civil rights by defending your own rights. You get your civil rights by defending the rights of those around you. Guys, if we have the right to be free, then we have the absolute duty to defend that freedom. See you later, brother. Good meeting you. We have the absolute duty to defend freedom. And if we fail to fulfill our duty of defending our freedom, then by the breach of obligation, we will have ceded our right to be free. If you want to claim to be free, then you must step up and you must defend that freedom. You have an obligation to do so. And if you're not willing to do it, then by your failure to fulfill your obligation, you will have forfeited your right to be free. Because rights always derive from the duty to act, okay? Right now, so, I just want you guys to understand the approach. That's all I want. That's the whole point of tonight, was I want you guys to understand that every single one of you had the exact same thing happen. We can all talk about the exact same point. You guys have got stories that you want to tell. I get it. There was shit that happened to you and your family, and you know what? You're going to get the chance to tell that story. But there's a time and a place. Right now is not the time, right? Right now the time is to get them to fucking notice the one issue that affects every one of us. The one thing that we can draw all the attention to. And if we start talking about it, then you know what? When we get them looking in that direction, then you can start telling your story. Because then you're going to be free. Then you're going to be able to tell everybody about what they did to you. Right? But if you talk about what they did to you now, we won't have the amplification on the issue. We need that. That's what's going to be the difference between getting in that court and not getting in that court. That court is able to ignore me because you guys aren't helping amplify this message. You guys aren't recognizing the fact that this issue, it's not about me, it's about this country. It's about what they did to you unlawfully and unconstitutionally. That we can all come together and talk about that one issue, the arrest. They didn't have authority to do it because they didn't have the proper documentation. And when we talk about it, we have the fucking power that we need. Because you know what? Power is not a gun. Power is not a badge. It's not a title. It's not an office. Power is the ability to influence others in their future decisions. If we get 10 million people talking about one thing, we got the power to influence others in their future decisions. Because that court will not be able to shut up 10 million people talking about one fucking constitutional violation. And so when you say that the numbers make us weak, I'm going to say no. The numbers make us fucking strong. The more people we can get talking about one issue, the more light we shine on it. And when we shine light on something that is blatantly unconstitutional because of the bullshit that court did, and we can show the history of it, and guess what, man? We're going to hold them accountable for the things they did. We're going to make these guys actually step up and hold the despicable predecessors that they're protecting it today. We're going to make them do it, and if they don't, then they're going to the gallows. You guys know it. They won't make it home. Because we got an awful lot of crazy people here that will take care of them if they don't choose to step up and obey the law and just do their job. But remember, The only reason why they exist is because of Article 3. So if that court is unwilling to step up and defend Article 3 and direct all the agents within the nation to obey the very edict that they put out, then by failure to take action, by failure to assert their supremacy, they will have destroyed their institution and they will have ceded their power down to the lower court judges. Because if the lower court judges can amend the law and do whatever they want, then that means the Supreme Court isn't supreme of anything. They're just a bunch of liars, a bunch of fools who don't do anything or know anything, right? So they either step up and make those courts that work for them obey what they say, or by failure to step up because they don't have the courage and integrity or honor to be able to do that. If they're unwilling to do that, they lose their organization. They will have given up their power to the lower courts. And if that's what they want to do, great. At least we know then. At least we know the direction we got to go. At least we know then that we got to deal with the edge courts. But that's not what we believe in, because that's not what the Constitution taught us. That's not what civics are here in America. We believe that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. If it's not, great. Tell us that, Supreme Court. Go away, shut your fucking institution down, and we'll go fight the battles out at the edge. But that's not what was established. That's not the three separate equal branch governments that was created by James Madison. That's not what was argued and defended. And that was certainly not what was ratified on September 17th, 1787, when we adopted the Constitution of the United States of America as a result of the establishment of three separate equal branch government that was put together by that constitutional convention that was held. That was not what James Madison conceived. That's not what Benjamin Franklin conceived. That's not what Alexander Hamilton. That's not what they conceived. That's not what the American people believe. So either our beliefs are true, and the Supreme Court, you're going to step up and you're gonna show us that our beliefs are true, because you're going to defend the only thing that exists that makes America America, and you're going to obey those laws. Or two, you're going to tell the American people that what they believe in isn't real, and then shut your fucking organization down, go home. We don't need you anymore. We're certainly not going to spend $600 billion on a fucking city that doesn't do anything, because it's full of a bunch of fucking pussies. They can't stand up and do anything because they're just too scared of fucking whatever, or they're too heavily invested in the industry. So that's where we're at, guys. All right. All of these 2.9 million people, you guys can get behind me. You guys can talk about this because it affects all of you. And the benefit here is that you guys don't got to spend $20,000. Don't go get an attorney. Fuck those attorneys, man. They put you into prison. Don't believe that they're going to get you out of prison. You're fucking crazy if you do. Save your money. Send me $1, guys. Send me. Don't get a ramen pack tonight and send me $1. Give me the money I need. Fund me to get this fucking finished and out of goddamn Oklahoma and back on the road so that I can get this fucking done, you guys. I need you to back me, guys. I can't do anything because I don't fucking work for money. I work because I care about you guys, because I believe in this, because I know I can do it. And guys, I've weighed the risk, and I can do it. But I need you guys behind me now. You guys got to get behind me. And I don't care. You guys, I have no fucking money. I have no car, right? I don't work. And you guys, you're either gonna get behind this, or I can't tell you how much longer I'm gonna be able to go, because these guys, I mean, you guys can get me there. I don't need much, but once we organize those people in prison, once they come to understand the strategy here, you don't talk about your issues. You don't give them anything to arbitrate. You simply point at the crime that they committed the moment that they arrested you without lawful constituted authority. That is the only thing you got to talk about. Nothing else, because by that criminal act, everything else is unconstitutional. You cannot have an unconstitutional arrest resulting in a constitutional outcome. Nothing else needs to be said besides going on offense and accusing them of the crime that they committed against you when they arrested you without lawful authority. That's it. Nothing else has to be said. And that tactic, when you go on offense and you accuse them of their crime and you don't fucking talk about the things that they want you to talk about, you win. Because there is no right to self-defense for a public official. If you breach the constitutional obligation, you don't get to justify it. Your crime is per se. All I gotta do is show that you had an obligation, you failed to fulfill the obligation, and guess what? You've already implicitly invited punishment in the form of perjury should you fail to fulfill that promise. Guys, that's all you gotta do. Don't let them draw you into the evidence procedures. Don't let them draw you down into the fucking lies of the prosecutor. Don't let them draw you down into the biasness of the judge. None of that matters, because the crime that they committed against you, go go on offense and accuse them of that crime. And when you do, don't talk about anything else. And that is where we get our power. All of us talking about one fucking crime being committed prolifically across this country against every single person that's sitting in prison. Do you want to go home? Then save your fucking money, send me the money, and let's get this done, man. I'll see you on the other side, okay? Thank you guys so much. God bless. Please continue to like, follow, share. Please donate if you can. I'm sorry that there's assholes that are coming around here that are pretending to be me. Guys, I'm telling you, I will fight for everyone, but I will not fight for anyone. Guys, I'm not going to come down and fight on your cases. I'm not going to do it because that's not necessary. I don't have enough time to be able to fight all of your individual cases, but I can fight one. And that one fight is enough to get all of you the fuck out of there, man. We can win, but I need you guys behind me. All for one and one for all. I win, I'll send help down from above. You guys got to push me in that court. I'm ready to go, all right? Let's get this done, okay? I have Cash App, Chime, Venmo, PayPal. They're all exactly the same, guys. So we shall be free. It's WESHALLBEFREE. We shall be free. Guys, get my videos. Get them out there. Start talking about the issue that affects every single one of us. And let's break through this fucking glass ceiling. And when I get down into Texas this week, if I got the money, if I have to hitchhike, I don't care. We're going to Texas. And we're going to find a producer that's going to run this story, okay? Get behind this. Help bring this forward. Stop talking about the shit that doesn't matter. Talk about the crime that they committed when they put you in a fucking jail without lawful authority because they didn't follow the fucking Constitution. Talk about that. And they won't be able to overcome it, okay? Thank you guys so much. God bless. Have a great rest of your night, okay? Thank you guys. Thank you. I'll come through and I'll read all this and I'll respond to questions. But I'm pretty tired now. So thank you guys so much. God bless everybody. And guys, it's an honor to be able to do this, man. It's an honor. I just hope that you guys will help me out on this because I'm getting really tired, guys. I am, and I can't continue to be living like this because this isn't getting me there, right? When I have to focus half my day on where am I going to sleep tonight, how am I going to come up with $20 to what? That's a half a day that I could have spent trying to focus on how do I overcome this enemy, right? You guys can alleviate that. You guys can get me focused on the issue so I can overcome that and keep me from having to waste all this time worrying about what am I going to do today, right? I do this because I'm trying to help all of you, right? I do this because I care about you and I know that I can handle this. I do this because I love my country and I know that my country is nothing more than an aggregate of the people. That's why I love my country. I love all of you, right? So let's work together, right? Believe me, don't believe me, but at least believe the laws that's coming out of my mouth because you can believe them. You can read them yourself, okay? What I say is the truth. You can go find out yourself. Believe in that if you don't believe in me. But give me the power to be able to go out and do this, all right? Thank you guys so much. God bless everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, TikTok.